How you doing? IB Nation Sports Talk Mailbag Wednesday with the one and only Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. Hope you're having a good day as we continue to kind of bundle up a little bit here in South Bend these last few days. It's just the strangest weather we've had. I hate to lead the show with weather, but it's just weird.
Right? Didn't think I'd be wearing a hoodie on June 14th as I was out shagging balls for my son today. And but then I had to lose it to go cut the grass. So it's like I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't know.
I got mine cut yesterday right before the rain really started coming in. So
it rained a lot yesterday.
It did. Once it started, it kept going for a while.
And it was steady. I mean, it was a steady, but we needed it. We needed like a soaking rain, and we definitely got it. That's for sure.
Like allergy-wise, I definitely feel better today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've been taking my pill.
Floating around in the air and all that kind of stuff. So
no doubt about that. Absolutely.
For sure. All right, we'll hit that like button. We do appreciate it. Kevin Corrigan on tomorrow's show. Notre Dame men's lacrosse coach just got back this week from Germany. They went and did a little European clinic after winning the national championship a couple of weeks ago, and talked with him today. So that'll be tomorrow's show. Looking forward to that. Some good stuff talked about with Coach Corrigan.
Nice.
Today. 35 years, man. 35 years he had to wait to win his first national championship.
It's crazy.
Could you have done it, Mr. Patiently Impatient?
I could have, yes. I mean, I've been coaching a long time as well. Never won a state title.
Years. Yeah.
And I'm sure Notre Dame takes care of them. I'm sure Notre Dame is a good job. I mean, you and I have chosen to raise our children here. It's a good place to raise your kids, that kind of a thing. So, I think being a head coach at the University of Notre Dame, and especially with what they've poured into the lacrosse program, absolutely. I think
especially in recent years, building the stadium and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely,
it's interesting because he kind of voluntarily brought up some of that. He said one of his family members was like, "Why are you always so grouchy? You've got a great situation here. You're coaching lacrosse, things could be worse. You're at Notre Dame, all these different things. So some interesting stuff. You'll definitely want to hear that with Coach Corrigan tomorrow. And of course, we'll follow that up, Jesse and I, with a rapid fire afterwards. But he was not grouchy when I talked to him today. I think winning a national championship will do that.
He's got to be, just cloud nine, right? I mean, you get to go through the whole offseason as a champion and don't have to worry about anything. Now, obviously, you got to worry about recruiting and camps, and you got to get right back into the grind. But it's a little easier to do that stuff when you've got a title. You're the reigning champ. So I can only imagine that he's got to be in a good mood.
Yep, for sure. Well, let's jump into it. It is Mailbag Day, so we've got plenty of questions in the queue lined up. First one is from Irish Chi-Town. Any news on what Coach Freeman will do with the 2 remaining scholarships? Is Notre Dame done trying to add players via the portal?
Well, I'm guessing that they are done. I'm guessing that those 2 are probably going to go to a walk-on or, something along those lines. Right now, you're in the middle of June. They've started their summer workouts. They're doing stuff. This is where kind of the season starts, right? You can miss spring and still be a part of it. Obviously, a lot of first-time players are. There's a story over on irishbreakdown.com because they put out the new roster. So you've got all the freshmen on there. You've got all the transfers on there. You've got, everybody, the walk-ons, everybody's on there now, right? And so the season pretty much starts. I would be shocked if more transfers are coming in. That would surprise me greatly. And this is an opportunity to reward the efforts of some walk-ons and things like that. Look, Notre Dame's in a good place with their roster. They're not in desperate need of anything, I don't think, in my opinion. I think they're ready to go into battle with the roster that they've got. And they now have the luxury of having 2 extra scholarships that they can give away, basically, and, provide some social media content, if you will, as they give those away. So I don't think that they're going to give them away to a transfer or anything like that. I don't see it.
No, and I mean, at this point, I think that if there was a transfer to be added, they would have added him. It's been a few weeks since they brought in the Penn State running back, and that was kind of the end of it. And they filled a lot of different holes with the transfers that they did add. Would they have liked to add more? Probably so, but I just think that where they are right now, just what you said, you either award it to a walk-on, or maybe like Cole Aubrey, the Princeton player, if he comes in, he'll be with them. He's coming over here on his own dime, transferring after having experience playing at Princeton. If he turns into someone, they'll be able to recognize it, I would think, both through the summer and early in fall camp. Like, is this a guy who's going to contribute? If they feel like he's going to be a contributor to some degree, maybe you give it to him, So yeah, I don't think they're adding any more though at this point.
I would be very surprised if they added anybody at this point, because then here's the other thing. What's left in the portal, right? I mean,
exactly. And that's why I think if there was someone to be added, he'd be added right now by already.
Exactly. So, and you've got, like you said, you've got some really good possibilities on the roster already that you could give out scholarships to. So I think that they're going to use those in a very judicious way, right? And I don't think the transfer portal's it.
Yeah. Salty wants to know, do you think Luke Talich will see playing time at safety, and how do you think he would do? He's a curious one because he's from a smallish town, Cody, Wyoming. I don't know exactly how big Cody, Wyoming is, but there aren't many, large towns other than Casper, and I'm trying to think of like some other Wyoming towns. I've been to Casper, Wyoming before.
Wow,
decent sized. That was back in when I was in Colorado 20 plus years ago before I moved here. Colorado just south of Wyoming, and I was doing junior college baseball and basketball, and they played the it was like the region. I think it was like the Region 9 junior college tournament was in Casper,
okay,
I believe. So that was my, one trip to Casper. There's a lot of wide open spaces in Wyoming. Let's put it that way. But the point on Talich is he was a 3-star guy who decided to walk on at Notre Dame. He had some offers from places like Utah and I believe Washington State and Oregon State before he ultimately ended up here at Notre Dame. So he's not a traditional walk-on. So, will he play? I don't know. He was he was a 3-star guy.
Sure.
He's still an incoming freshman, so you just never know. But given the state of the safety position, I'd at least give him a fighting chance to open up some eyes during training camp.
Well, he's going to be able to battle for the depth chart. I mean, just like anybody else that comes in, right? I mean, he's going to have an opportunity to battle. I think he's going to start? No. Do I think he's going to be a rotation player at safety? No, I don't. Is there a possibility? I guess. That would be a stretch for me as a true freshman. Could he help on special teams? That's a definite possibility. And I would say that about a lot of the true freshmen, even the ones with scholarships, and for whatever reason, Notre Dame decided not to give him a scholarship, right? At least at this point. Now, could he get one of the 2 that are open? Sure. But I think it's a bit of a stretch. And yes, the safety depth chart is not as deep as maybe you would want it to be. But at the same time, I feel like expecting a walk-on safety to get time on a defense on a team that you think is going to be a potential college football playoff team, I think that's a little bit of a hard sell for me at this point. Now, he could go out there and just be a dude, I suppose, in fall camp and over the summer and all of that, and maybe he works his way into the depth chart and maybe onto special teams or that, but I would be very surprised if he was a rotation player at safety in games that matter. That would surprise me.
You would hope that you're bringing this guy in and you've got nothing to lose by bringing in a guy who was a 3-star recruit and letting him walk on. just what we're talking about right now. Maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, if
Right.
Notre Dame is light, if Notre Dame is plus 2 scholarships and a
Right.
guy like this has shown himself like he's about to make a move on the depth chart. He's about to find himself some playing time. Like this could be a guy a year or two down the road who you would award a scholarship to. And you would hope that maybe at least a year for, because like you said, that there's going to be some turnover on the depth chart a year from now. Safety is going to continue to be a need. Safety position is going to come up in rapid fire again, by the way. And, you might know why, of course, if you've been following recruiting around. But yeah, this year I think is probably too soon. Year or two from now, this is the kind of guy who maybe has some opportunities.
If you were going to give me the option of a walk-on safety to get playing time at Notre Dame, Marty Auer is going to be the guy that I would pick first. That dude was like a missile during spring practice. He impressed the crap out of me. He's a walk-on. I would give him a scholarship before I would give one to a true freshman. He's a junior. He's been around. He's paid his dues for the first 2 years, and he actually played well during spring practice. I would give Marty Auer a scholarship first. If you're giving me the option between the two guys, that's what I would do.
Concur. Garrett, I like this question. If my firstborn son grows up and wants to root for USC, should I A, spray him with a hose, B, disown him, or C, spray him with a hose and disown him?
How do you not go with C? I don't know how. It's all of the above, right? It's the classic SAT question. So no, that would be tough. That would be tough to have a kid that would root for USC. I've got a family member who went to USC, and it's always an interesting conversation with that particular family member when
I'm sure
Notre Dame is playing USC. But you kind of got to let the kid do his own thing. If you did a poor job as a parent and you don't have them, rooting for Notre Dame and they've decided to go to the dark side to USC, I think you got to look in the mirror, Garen. I don't know if that's really your child's fault. I think that's on you.
You have to do your best to indoctrinate them when they're still in your household. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I would, I don't know if I would necessarily disown them, because personally, coming from a dad who was a Washington Redskins fan, I, became a Dallas Cowboys fan. I went my own way, and we don't have a bad relationship. He didn't disown me as a result, so it worked out. You got to let them think for themselves, but at the same time, at the very least, you have to try the indoctrination first before it gets to that point, right? Like I never forced the Dallas Cowboys or Notre Dame or, any of these teams on Jesse when he was young. But at the same time, especially here, it was just too easy because he was around Notre Dame stuff all the time, and, it's the Notre Dame stuff here is easy. If you live in South Bend, it should be kind of a slam dunk. You just go, like you do the thing. But like my dad used to give him Washington Redskins stuff for Christmas. And it was like, and I felt a little bit guilty, like he was still really young. So I would at least, like throw it on the bed or whatever. But by the time he got a little bit older, it's like, okay, Dad, I'm going to buy him twice as much Cowboys stuff as your Redskins stuff at Christmas once a year. So do your own brainwashing and just hope that works. And otherwise, I would probably at least, garden hose maybe when he's 10.
You can't disown him until, he's a little older.
Yeah, don't disown him, though. Don't disown him, though.
Yeah,
encourage him to make his own decisions.
That's right.
But, don't let it drive a complete wedge between you. At least have a little fun with it if it does, end up going that direction. Okay. There was another one that I wanted to get from Benjamin in here. Buy or sell. There will be a 30 for 30 on ESPN at the end of the season because the Irish will win the championship.
Man. Well, I placed a small wager that Notre Dame would win the championship. The odds were really, really good, obviously, because a lot of people don't think that Notre Dame can do it. So I think I put a 10 spot or something like that, with really, really good odds, win like $500 or something crazy like that. So, I guess I got to put my money where my mouth is, and I'll say buy because I did bet that Notre Dame would win. Now it was a great odds situation. Now, if I was a logical thinking human being, I would sell that, and I would say that the odds are a little stacked against Notre Dame at this point, especially since I haven't seen them play as a full team yet. I feel like I would at least need to see a practice or two before I'm willing to say Notre Dame's going to win a national championship. There's a lot of pieces that I haven't seen yet, things of that nature. I know that I'm stalling. But I would love that if that was the case. If Notre Dame wins a national championship, you're going to see documentaries. You're going to see a 30 for 30. You're going to see all of these different things. You want to know why? Because it'll sell. It'll sell. And it will make Pete Bavacqua's job that much easier in the next TV deal.
I'm going to be honest. I've been pretty disappointed with the general slate of 30 for 30s that have been coming out lately.
I haven't even heard of any coming out lately. So
they just did a Bill Walton this past week.
Oh, really?
It was a 2-parter. And I was really kind of, Bill Walton with the person. And there was some stuff that was interesting. I knew that he had some injuries during his career. It's like, man, didn't realize the extent of the injuries, but still it was just kind of like, I don't know. And yeah, for Notre Dame though, winning the national championship,
that's a lot.
I know. TCU got to the national championship game though last season.
They did.
So TCU can get there. Yeah. I think TCU opens the door for hope for everybody.
Oh, sure. I mean, and look, Notre Dame has a schedule that is conducive to getting there. I mean, you can
tough, but not too tough.
Right. You've got enough marquee games where enough eyeballs are going to be on Notre Dame. They're not going to be. See, that was one of the things with TCU. Nobody knew anything about them when they got to the postseason. Hardly anybody watched them. I mean, let's be honest. Not a lot of people were watching TCU football throughout the season. Notre Dame is going to have that opportunity. So I think, as long as they take advantage of their opportunities, then people are going to vote for them in the AP poll and the coaches poll and all that nonsense, right? And I think that they're going to be able to make waves in the college football playoff poll and all of that. So they're going to have their opportunities. The only thing keeping Notre Dame out of the national championship hunt is Notre Dame. I mean, I think that they are capable. They have a roster to win every game on their schedule. Now, is that a realistic thing to occur? No, not necessarily. Like, they clearly had more, talent than Marshall and Stanford, and how'd that turn out? You know what I mean? So there is that. There is you got to play the games, right? But on paper, Notre Dame can compete and win every single game that's on their schedule this year, and it's a hard enough schedule that could propel them to where they want to be. It's all in their hands. They hold their own destiny at this point. They 100% do. They hold their own destiny.
Good call. Garen, do you think it's feasible in the future we'll see a lawsuit against a player for breaking either a commitment or transferring after receiving NIL money, i.e. a company recouping its expenses?
100% yes. Absolutely. With the open checks that are being written for some of these incoming freshmen, another what do they call them? An acquisition fee, I believe. That's what I've heard it called on some other podcasts and things like that. These acquisition fees are outrageous, right? And some of these acquisition fees are coming from businesses where, I mean, NIL is supposed to be a pay for a service, right? And, when you're going to pay all that money, you expect a service in return for the next 3 to 4 years. I think that's a logical thing to expect if you are now, if you're just a private donor and you're just donating money, then you're donating money. But eventually there's going to be a company that's going to put a bunch of money out there for somebody, a local company who it only works if a Notre Dame player is representing them or X university, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they decide to go someplace and they haven't fulfilled their end of the bargain, 100% they're going to get sued. And that's that's business. And I have no problem with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's bound to happen at some point just because of what you said. All this money that is changing hands and getting guys to go here and there, and women as well, obviously in other sports. It's just bound to happen at some point. I'm curious, like right now, it's only been in effect for a couple of years. Are there contracts being signed?
Right. That's the
for
thing.
These guys. Like, are people actually, like, here's your money, but sign on the dotted line. These are the terms. Like, are there, because these athletes do have agents and they're allowed to have agents now because of NIL. So I'm curious what wording in these contracts looks like, because that's obviously what's ultimately going to make someone liable, to repay said money, if
I mean, if a
they
company's
if they break their contract.
if a company's gonna spill that kind of money into a recruit, right? Why would they not want a return on their investment? I mean, they're not just giving the money away. And if they are, that's just bad business practice, right? I think a lot of the money that these recruits are getting are donations. They're donations from individual people, I think. I'm guessing, I'm extrapolating. But if it's straight up from a business, then you have to expect something in return. You have to.
Right.
Otherwise, why are you giving away your business's profits?
Well, and did you see there was something came out, I think, from the NCAA this week to the effect of NIL contributions are not tax deductible, which I don't know why they would have been, because like technically, I guess you can say it's a donation since you're putting it into a fund, but at the same time, it's basically a salary. It's that you're giving the player, of whatever kind. So they've determined that it is not a donation. So
Interesting.
you cannot write it off on your taxes.
Doesn't that make it even more possible for a lawsuit? Because now it's a business transaction.
Right. Exactly. It's definitely a business transaction.
Right.
Whereas before, right, you could sort of try to justify it as a donation, but you can't do that now. So yeah, I think it sets it up even more. The longer this goes, there's going to be litigation at some point. There's
Absolutely.
no doubt about that.
No question.
Tim wants to know what we're most excited to see from the offense and defense coming into practices.
I mean, look, I'm an offensive guy. I was a quarterback's coach. I was a wide receivers coach. I want to see Sam Hartman throw into these receivers. That's what I want to see. Defensively, I want to see the linebacker play. What's that rotation look like? What do the young guys look like, et cetera? I'm probably like with most fans with those two things. I mean, why would you not want to see the quarterback slinging it all over the place? And this defense is an effective linebacking core away from being a really, really good defense. And if they can be an athletic, fly to the football linebacking core, this defense is going to be really good. And so I want to see it with my own eyes. What about you?
Not much different than what you said. I would just say defensively, some of the most fun stuff that we've gotten to see over the years has been like the fall camp cornerback wide receiver matchups, like especially when you've had some, really skilled, capable guys on both sides of the ball. And when you've got Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart up against whether it's Jaden Thomas, Tobias Merriweather, Dion Colsey, Chris Tyree, Tyree Moore, slot guy, obviously, but on down the line, those are the kind of matchups that I hope we get to see some of those competitive sessions during fall training camp. Those are always some of the most fun, I think, to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
but offensively, it's just what you said. We all want to see Hartman,
of course,
connect with the receivers.
Yeah, of course.
But it makes it more fun when you've got Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart,
absolutely,
and that whole iron sharpens iron, and all that kind of stuff.
And that'll tell us where the wide receivers are at, right? I mean, we know that the corners are good. We know this. Okay, we've seen Cam Hart over the years. We saw Benjamin Morrison last year. We haven't seen these receivers as a group get out there and play. So, like, you're right. The one-on-ones with Benjamin Morrison versus Tobias Merriweather or whatever the case may be. Yeah, man, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, I concur. Garrett's got an interesting one. There's been a devastating natural disaster in Indiana. No casualties. It's kind of contradictory, isn't it? Devastating natural disaster, but there are no casualties. Notre Dame is forced to relocate to a different state.
Oh, boy.
What state do they go to? There's only one right answer here, he says. Okay,
there's only one right answer. There's 49 answers. I was
going to say he's setting us up. So
man, I don't know what
his right answer is.
I don't know where he's from. So well, it worries me because, I feel like I'd have to move. But I mean, I know you can do this job by not being there. I would want them close by, though. That's the whole point. But if you want Notre Dame to be, even more elite, then they got to move to SEC country. And then I think that they could really compete with the big boys on the recruiting level. Not that they're not doing that already, but Notre Dame is just such a Midwest team. Like, the fall colors during football and all those different things. Like, that would be a sad thing to get rid of if they were down in the South. So I don't know what the answer is here. Notre Dame belongs in Indiana. Does the whole state get imploded? Like, what happened?
I mean, it's in Indiana because they were trying to get to California, but they got snowbound, here in South Bend. Would you want to, like San Diego? There are a lot worse places than San Diego. I think, that you could, they were trying to get to San Diego, but they were trying to get out there to California anyway. They were trying to get to the West Coast.
They had a long way to go.
Yeah, I would take San Diego. I think that would be a good place.
I've heard I heard San Diego is just beautiful. It's like 72 every day.
I was going to say 72 and sunshine every day. And you don't, like you've got San Diego State down there. So you don't have, like a natural anything else to compete with. Texas would probably be second choice, but at the same, again, you've got major universities all over the place. So, why even bother? Just take San Diego, take the ocean and the sunshine, and your rival, you turn USC into a backdoor rivalry, because they're just right up the road there in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I would take that.
Okay, I can get on board with that. I don't know if I could move to California. That'd be weird. I don't know if I'm a California person.
You could still podcast here.
Could do it.
Just
be a lot more expensive for Brian to fly me out to California for home games.
USMA 87 says San Diego's amazing, very high cost of living.
Yeah,
I can only imagine. I mean,
I cannot afford to live in San Diego. That's for sure.
Very high cost of living. Chicago already has the highest or the biggest Notre Dame fan base. That's, like if I had to move, I don't know if I'd want to stay in the Midwest if you had to pack up your bags and go someplace else. If you're Notre Dame, get out there and, like I said, find the good weather. I think what I would.
Maybe a tough. That takes the negative recruiting off the table as far as the weather at Notre Dame. That's for sure.
Yeah. Tim wants to know, would an OSU win this year equal the 1993 Florida State win?
Ooh. No, I don't think so. Number one, it's the placement of the game in the season. It's a little too early. It wouldn't quite have as much riding on it as the 93 game. I mean, what was the 93 game? Game 11, right? Or game 10? Was there 11 games back then?
It was in November. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the second to last game of the season.
It was 11 because, BC was the next week.
So it was the second to last game of the season. So, there was way more riding on that game than there'll be riding on this game.
And it was 1 versus 2.
Right. And that won't be the case. There's no way that Notre Dame rises up to number 2 in 4 weeks. Like that's with the schedule that they're playing, there's just no way. Now they could be a top 10 team.
Now, if Ohio State somehow rose to number 1 and Notre Dame is sitting around, it would at least be similar, but again, it was 1 versus 2, and like you had 2 heavyweights basically.
When you had the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback for Florida State, that's not going to be the case at Ohio State. There was more to that game in 93 than is going to be in this game. It's going to be a huge game. It's a huge game. And if Notre Dame wins it, it's a huge feather in their cap. There's no doubt about it.
For sure.
But it's not 93. Remember, after the 93 game, everybody was pretty much, Notre Dame just won the national championship. And obviously that came crashing down 7 days later. But that was huge. Nobody's going to be saying Notre Dame's going to win the national championship after week 5. So it's just the level is a little bit different.
Concur. Chi-Town, if all things were equal, what would be your preferences for the media and apparel contracts?
Well, we kind of talked about the media on Monday, right? We talked about that. I kind of ranked them. For me, it was funny. I was listening to another podcast today because I enjoy listening to other Notre Dame podcasts. And actually, I'll say it. It was the Irish Illustrated guys. I love listening to the Tims do their thing. And obviously, they're friends of our program as well. So I love giving them a listen. But they're convinced that Notre Dame's going NBC and there's really no other option. And that obviously they're entitled to their opinion and they may be right. But for me, I still want Fox as my number one. Like that would still be my number one, and NBC would be my number two with some changes. So that's my media. Apparel, from a Vince standpoint, I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me personally. I like Under Armour stuff, like is the gear that I get and I wear. I like Under Armour. I'm not wearing their cleats. And I know that that's a thing with the athletes. And I know the tennis shoes are a thing with the athletes. So I would, if I had any say in it whatsoever, I would have some of the athletes on the panel, or at least have a panel of athletes to discuss this and talk to them and, that whole thing. I would be fine with Under Armour, but I think the athletes would be ticked. And so I'm okay if they go Nike. I do not want them to go Jumpman. I want them to go Nike. So
You're on the record. You're on the record, anti-Jumpman.
Yep. And
we
always
know that.
Will be.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before. I'm with you. I like Under Armour gear, and I like the fit of Under Armour generally, and a lot of stuff looks good and all that kind of stuff. But I just think the shoes are not what they need to be when you are an elite program. Now, as we've talked about before, if there were some kind of wiggle room, like if Under Armour were to stay on as the apparel, but the players get to do their own shoe deals and that kind of stuff, so they have the option to wear other shoes if they want, then that could change things. Would would Under Armour or any other apparel company be open to that kind of thing? That's
good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big check that they're going to sign, and it's a lot that they're providing, but they're going to get a lot of exposure out of being with Notre Dame when every game is a national broadcast, so and everything else that comes with being with Notre Dame. The vast majority of the players, the athletes, seem to like Nike. So whether it's Nike, Jumpman, that's where I would, I know you don't want Michael Jordan on the front of the jersey.
I know,
and all that.
And let me just say, I am a huge Jordan fan. Like as far as the player himself, like I love Michael Jordan. I loved watching the '90s Bulls. Like that was like right in my high school. That was it right there. People wanted number 23 because of Michael Jordan. Like that was a thing. And I loved Michael Jordan. And I would love to see the Jumpman logo on Notre Dame's basketball uniforms. I think that would be awesome. Just not on their football stuff. Maybe I'm just weird, but I'm just stuck in that hole and I just can't get out of it. I just can't.
It's just a logo, Vince. You need to get over it.
I know. Then just slap the Nike logo on all the Jumpman gear and call it a day. It's just a logo.
There you go. As far as the TV deal, again, we broke the whole thing down the other day, and I'm gonna write an article and have it up at Irish Breakdown here probably within the next couple of days, kind of recapping sort of the breakdown of where what each network is going to have at this point. I don't think again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I realize, and again, we broke it down from an inventory standpoint, what the different broadcast entities are going to have. NBC definitely makes the most sense, but at the same time, if you're Pete Bavacqua / Jack Swarbrick, you're not telling NBC that. And, again, Bavacqua has great detail about what NBC knows, what they can go to as far as their number, what they're likely, willing, to want, what they're willing to give, all those different things. He can use that to leverage against these other. All you've got to have is one other negotiating partner, and you can drive up the price. And at the very least, I think that because of where Fox is and what they will have in terms of their inventory, and the fact that they have both Fox, FS1, FS2, and they have the ability to stream some stuff as well. They're going to be doing the Big 10, the Big 12, maybe some Pac-12 stuff going forward. But, Big 10 and Big 12 with a broadcast company that's got some time options because their prime time is essentially noon. Well, that leaves you, they're not tied into a primetime game every night like NBC is with the Big Ten. So they have some flexibility, the majority of the afternoon after that noon game ends and into the prime time where they could fit Notre Dame if they wanted to. So
the 3:30 time slots right there for
Fox,
Notre Dame, man.
Fox really interests me a lot, actually. And I think at the very least, there's some leverage that could be
And
had there for
their inventory of announcers is 1,000 times better than what NBC
Yes.
has as well. And I think that has to be taken into account, right? I mean, I really do. And I can't stop thinking about what a great triple header you could have on Fox every single Saturday. You got big noon kickoff, then you got Notre Dame, and then you've got whatever else game that you can come up with, right? Whether that's the Pac-10, 12, whatever, as a primetime game. You could do a triple header on Fox every single week, and they could dominate. I'm telling you, they could dominate the college football landscape really quickly.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
The, ACC and the SEC and, maybe Pac-12, again, we don't know yet, but ACC and SEC are definitely going to be on the ESPN Disney properties. Tim asked about CBS, and as we outlined the other day, the problem with CBS going forward is they're moving away from the SEC, but CBS is going to have the 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time Big Ten game every Saturday. That is their package, and that wipes out the middle of the afternoon for Notre Dame. So there's no place to put Notre Dame on CBS other than noon or 7:30.
And there's no chance that
that's
Notre
not
Dame
desirable
is going to be okay
for Notre
with
Dame.
that.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
They're not going to give up their afternoon time slot. All their games were at 2:30 or 3:30 back in the day. They didn't have any primetime home games. That's been over the last few years that they've started doing that. There's no way they're giving up their afternoon time slot. No chance. So I think CBS has eliminated themselves, if they were ever even involved. They've eliminated themselves from the Notre Dame sweepstakes because they have no afternoon availability.
Exactly. So that's why I think NBC does seem to, still be the easiest fit.
Sure.
But I don't think Fox is out of the picture by any means.
I think
if they desire to have Notre Dame.
Right. And that's the other thing that we don't know the answer to. We don't know if Fox is interested in having Notre Dame. It might be just a one-horse race, which would be bad for Notre Dame because you do want two companies competing against each other in order to drive up that price. I think the most logical spot would be NBC.
But ESPN could still be in the mix as well.
Sure.
Because again, remember ESPN has always had tonnage in terms of whatever sport it is, whether it's college basketball or football. There's games galore. And obviously the big key there is you have ABC as well. And most of the time when Notre Dame is on one of the Disney, channels, it ends up on ABC to some extent, at least, again, a majority of the time. I'm not saying all the time. There's still some but the fact that you have ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, and obviously you have the streamers. You also have ESPN News if they want to, push some stuff there. So there are just so many places that ESPN can put stuff that I would think that there, would at least have to be some general interest on their part in getting Notre Dame. But again, I think you lose some of the, it definitely, they're all corporations, but I think that it becomes much more corporate once you jump into ESPN, just because.
Oh yeah,
there's so much there.
It would be funny. I would be very interested to see the overall fan reaction if they ended up getting picked up by ESPN/ABC, just because the vitriol for some fans when it comes to ESPN, I would be very interested. And then I would also, if that does happen, I would also be interested to hear
Good call, Decaf, ACC Network. Forgot about them.
I would also be very interested to hear how the ESPN talking heads change the way they talk about Notre Dame too. I think that would just fuel the fire even more for the hatred of ESPN for the fans. I really think that.
And Baldwin's errant shot says ESPN would be huge for Notre Dame's image, at least as that applies to the casual college football fan. I think at the very least, you are probably going to have a little bit more favorable, sort of Notre Dame conversation going on
Oh yeah,
like on game day and some of
sure.
some of the other like college football live and stuff like that.
Now,
It's like now again, it's like the thing about the like ESPN bias, all those different kind of things. You have to remember, like Kirk Herbstreit moved out of Columbus where he went to college. He moved to Nashville because Ohio State fans were coming after him all the time. Like every other fan base is out there. It's not just Notre Dame. Every
true.
other fan base thinks that ESPN is
He's
against them.
biased.
It's
Of
not
course.
just Notre Dame.
Right.
But because you're Notre Dame and you hear all this stuff, you think, as a Notre Dame fan or whatever, you think that it's all directed at you, but every other fan base feels the same as well.
I will say that it would also be an interesting negotiating point, Sean. If they did go to ESPN, they could have the same play-by-play and color announcer for every single home and away game that they have, because all of their away games are on ESPN / ABC. You could have the same two dudes, whoever it happens to be, and that could be bad, it could be good, doing all their games home and away.
Could have Mike Monaco, Notre Dame guy.
I would take him over the current 100%. I think he's good.
Absolutely.
I think he's really good. And he's a Notre Dame alum. Apparently that matters.
Ray, what would need to happen to see CJ Carr start his freshman year? If he was clearly the best quarterback, would Notre Dame OC staff start him? I think he's the best quarterback to sign with Notre Dame since Jimmy Clausen.
Ray, that's a great question. And I think of all of the words that you used, the word right there, clearly, would have to be, is the key word here. He has to clearly be head and shoulders above the other two guys in order to start, because he would have one spring under his belt and he would have one fall camp under his belt. And then you're asking him to take the reins of a team in 24 that arguably has a better roster than in 23 and has an opportunity again to go to the college football playoff. That would be a big, tall order. Now, I'm a huge CJ Carr fan. Could he do it? Probably. Do you want to put the reins of this team in his hands as a true freshman in game one? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Sean. I would have to see it with my own eyes that he was head and shoulders above everybody else. And somebody kind of answered this question after it was asked. And I do want to pull that up because I thought that he made some very good points. But of course now I can't find it, and that's okay. Basically they said, oh, here we go. Baldwin's errant shot says CJ would have to he will be an early enrollee. Absolutely. He will have to A, prove he's better option at quarterback over Minchie and Jelly, etc. And B, hope the staff does not take another transfer for 24.
See, and
they're going to take a transfer.
B is what I was waiting for you to finish your answer so that I could bring up, since you hadn't brought it up. That's why
I wanted to pull this up. So I will toss it to you. You can have that now.
That. And that's really the biggest question is, are they bringing in a transfer next year? And I would think that they're going to.
They would have to make that decision in December, like before CJ Carr even steps on campus.
And look, if Sam Hartman has a monster year, throw a little Boston talk at you. Monster year I don't know why, since he's Sam Hartman and he's from South Carolina. But if he has a monster year, then it's going to be incredibly easy for Notre Dame to go out and land a transfer quarterback next year.
Yeah.
And that's going to be
that's going to be the numbers standpoint. They need another body.
It really comes down to that. Are they going to and considering where the roster is right now, and you lost both of last year's quarterbacks and you have zero experience on the roster beyond, on your organic roster beyond Sam Hartman, I don't know why there's no reason to believe they won't go out and try to land another transfer quarterback.
It just depends on. Here's the other thing, and so I'll kind of build off of what you just said. They're getting a transfer. Like, everybody just needs to accept the fact they're getting a transfer quarterback. Now, is it another Sam Hartman? Does Drake May decide he wants to do his fourth year of college at Notre Dame? Like, where, depends on the level of transfer that you bring in. Are you promising? Are you promising the starting position to the transfer quarterback that comes in, or is it somebody that you're going to promise a competition for the starting quarterback job? You know what I mean? So what level of transfer are they bringing in? That's going to be the question. Because I feel like if I had to predict it, barring a guy like Sam Harton being available in the offseason, that just doesn't happen every year. Can we at least agree on that? Like that's not usually a thing. So I think it's going to be a CJ Carr, Kenny Minchey transfer quarterback battle. It's going to be a 3-way battle for the quarterback position, and that's going to start in January when that transfer enrolls and CJ Carr enrolls.
But it's also going to be a hard battle for CJ Carr to win, even as an early enrollee, like to win that right away.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, no question. That's going to be
question will be how advanced is Kenny Minchey by that point?
Absolutely.
Like, is he ready to compete? Where is Steve Angeli?
Right. I think of those three that I mentioned, right? Minchey, Carr, transfer. Carr comes into that as the number 3, like because he was in high school.
He's coming right out of high school. Yeah.
I mean, that's just common sense. Now, could he work his way up? Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. And then Sam Anderson says if Carr wins Elite 11, looks outstanding in his senior year, they may have faith in he and Minchey. There's a difference between faith and bodies. You need bodies. They're going to bring someone in.
Still need another quarterback.
And if CJ Carr wins the Elite 11, it doesn't change anything. I'm sorry, it doesn't. That's a quarterback competition in shorts and T-shirts. That is it cool? Sure. Is it a trophy for your bookcase? Sure. It means nothing to me. I'm sorry. It's cool, but it's not real football. It's not real football. I've seen quarterbacks look really, really, really good in 7-on-7, and then you put pads on them, and you put a whole defense out there and an offensive line and a defensive line in front of them, and they look like garbage. So, winning the Elite 11 doesn't change who's going to be the starter next year. That's for me anyway.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh gave the reins to J.J. McCarthy. I'll be really curious to see. But he obviously had a lot around him, a lot of confidence. They didn't have to put it all on J.J. McCarthy. But the way Notre Dame is built as well. Now, there will be, you got to remember, you're also going to have 2 new left tackles next year. You're going to have
good point.
You're going to have a new center next year. Like you're only replacing 2 of the offensive linemen this year. You're going to be replacing 3 of them next year. So there'll be, that probably going to weigh into it as well. How much you want an inexperienced quarterback behind what's going to be a much more inexperienced offensive line. So, they might even be going out to the portal looking for some linemen next year. Who knows?
Sure. Absolutely.
We were talking about the fall matchups, receiver corners. Brent wants to know how much of an impact is it for the receivers to get to go up against 2 dogs every day in practice, like Hart and BMO?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. They're going up against the top 5 corner combination in the country, in my opinion, and arguably higher. And it's only going to make the wide receivers better because they're going to have a tougher time in practice than they'll ever have in a game. So it's huge. It's absolutely massive.
Absolutely. And because you've basically got one definite All-American caliber cornerback out there and another guy who has the chance to be an All-American caliber cornerback. And all it does is make those guys on the offensive side of the ball better and vice versa. Just like, back in the Julian Love, who was Julian Love going up, like Chase Claypool and
sure.
Those kind of matchups back at camp. It's,
yep.
It makes for some fun stuff for us to watch when we get the opportunities, and it does nothing but make those guys better.
Yeah. As a side, I'm looking at the past Elite 11 MVPs, the guys that have won it, right? They've gotten it right over the last few years. I will say that. Before that, man, it was pretty hit and miss. And I just want to go through them here real quick. And you can tell me if you think they got it right, okay? So last year was Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. We don't know yet. he hasn't played anything.
Jury's still out, right?
Jury's still out. Year before that, Cade Klubnik.
Okay.
I mean, jury's still out on him as well, I would say.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Caleb Williams, year before that. I think they got that one right, probably.
Hit. Yep.
They say that was a hit. CJ Stroud.
Hit.
Hit. Yep. I'm going to let you say hit or miss. Okay.
Okay.
Now, Spencer Rattler. Yeah.
Look, the guy has started, but he has been far from, as we were talking about yesterday, an elite college quarterback.
Right. Year before that, Justin Fields.
Hit.
I'd say that's a hit.
Number 1 draft pick. Yeah.
Year before that, Tua Tagovailoa.
Hit.
I'd say that's pretty good. He's got quite the list of accolades under his name as well. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Shea Patterson, Elite 11 MVP in 2015. Started out at Michigan, went to Ole Miss, I think, or the other way around. Okay, I'm trying to look at the other guys that were in this class. Not a lot of names in this
successful, relatively successful college quarterback, but again, not like Justin Fields or CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams. Successful.
The biggest name on this list is probably Dwayne Haskins was the biggest name probably in that group.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Forgot about that. Okay. Year before that, let's see here. Blake Barnett.
Think you got to call that a miss.
To call that a huge miss. He went to 4 colleges, went undrafted, has 0 accolades under Elite 11 MVP. Right? Sean White from Auburn was the year before that.
Miss.
Agreed. Asante Woolard was in
miss.
2012. That's a miss as well. Ended up playing for Clarion in Pennsylvania.
There you go.
In case you were curious. Let's see here. Then you get to Jameis Winston, and I'd say that was a hit. Jeff Driscoll was before him. So anyway, we're just going. I'm going through it.
I mean, but you went through a lot of years there, and you've got about a 90 to 95% hit rate, really.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So. Yeah.
So
I mean, if he does win, but again, it's like, but part of that is who are those guys competing against in those given years? How good were the other quarterback? Like that. If you're at the top, you're at the top, but it's still relative to who you're competing against in any given year. You know, like some of that could play into why those guys who were misses ended up being at the top of the heap there.
Right. So. Absolutely. And there's a lot of names that I don't know some of those years where it was a no-namer or a miss that won it. There's a lot of kids I don't know. And to be honest, so, they were I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody. So I'll just say that they were the best of the rest.
As Quinn says, that's one-time Notre Dame commit Blake Barnett to you.
That's true. This is true. He also ended up committing to a lot of other places as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. I've got a few others queued up. I'm going to save them here for rapid fire. Are you ready for rapid fire, Vincenzo?
Let's do it, man.
All right.
Somehow we just talked for 54 minutes
rolled right into
all these questions. This is great.
Yeah. Yep. Good stuff tonight. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Which has the better chance to happen this season? Audric Estime rushes for at least 1,200 yards, or one of Notre Dame's wide receivers tops 900 yards.
I honestly think both are going to happen. The only problem is if I had to pick one over the other, I'm going to pick Audric Estime. I think he hits about 1,300 or so yards. I think he's going to get over that. But I do think eventually Sam Hartman's going to find his number one guy. And I don't know who that is yet. That remains to be seen. He's going to spread the ball around. He's going to throw it to whoever's open. But I do think somebody might crack the 900-yard mark. But if my money goes towards Audric, I think he's almost guaranteed to get there, especially with the loss of Diggs. He's going to get a few more carries. I think he definitely hits that.
I had to, when I was coming up with the question, I had to keep kind of jacking up the numbers to try to figure out where the pressure point was. Apparently, I didn't pressure point it high enough. The last time a Notre Dame running back hit the 1,200-yard mark, it's been 6 years. Josh Adams in 2017. Now, Kyron Williams had a nice year a couple of years ago with 1,100 yards. But what else was around Kyren Williams? The running back room was not as deep as it is right now. And that's why I still think
Kyren had over 200 carries that year too.
I think Estime, yeah, that's right. Exactly. I think Estime is going to top 1,000 and probably hit 1,100. To me, the pressure point starts at 1,100 though, because of the fact that you have better depth than what Kyren Williams had when he had his 1,100 yard season a couple of years ago. So I think we're going to see at least two receivers around like 800 plus, and I think one of them will get to 900. Interestingly, Miles Boykin in 2018, 817 yards. The next year, Chase Claypool was a little over 1,000. But since that 2019, it's been basically the Michael Mayer show. And we haven't seen, since Javon McKinley had over 700 yards the next year, we haven't seen a Notre Dame receiver top 700 yards even. But I think we're going to see multiple receivers again top that. Again, because of like Estime is going to get his carries, but other guys are going to share the load as well. And the fact that they went out and added Ford, like I think that Estime is just going to have some of those opportunities taken away from him, and that's going to be good for Estime. It's going to be good for the team. So I'm going to go with the receiver yardage over Estime getting to 1,200. Again, I think he's going to top 1,000, but I think it's going to be a little bit tougher.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah, I think
that's fair.
To me, anyway. To me.
That's fair.
But that's, again, like that, where the pressure point is, that's when I'm really curious to see. So Notre Dame safety target Paul Menke Jr. has committed to Duke. How does this make you feel about Fighting Irish safeties coach Chris O'Leary?
To be honest with you, I'm not going to throw him under the bus just yet. This was not a O'Leary.
Not a total shocker.
It's not a total shocker, and I don't put this on O'Leary. I don't put this one on O'Leary at all. Let's just say some things outside of Notre Dame's control pretty much made this one go. And so I don't put that on O'Leary. I think that the safety recruiting has been an issue.
Do you want to just say it, or do you want to leave it in the shadows?
I got to leave it in the shadows. I'm not allowed to say. I'm not allowed to say. I can share it with you later, but I can't.
I don't want an idea of what you're talking about, but yeah.
I don't want to put the kids' dirty laundry out there because that's not our job. So anyway, I don't put this on O'Leary, but he does have to close on some of these guys. He's going to have to close on some of these safety guys moving forward. He can't strike out on all of them. You know what I mean? So the jury's still out just a little bit, but I don't put this one on him. So my opinion of him doesn't change in any way whatsoever, but he's got to close on some of these guys.
Yes. And again, the Menke thing, there's only so much Chris O'Leary or Notre Dame can do. The fact of the matter is kind of what you finish with. O'Leary needs to find a hit at some point.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And it's got to stick, because that's this. It's a very important position, and it has to be addressed in recruiting. And for whatever reasons, he hasn't got the hit yet. The hit that stuck. And that's where he is. Whatever the reasons are, he's got to find one that sticks. Yeah. That's just where it is right now. I realize sometimes like. Very close the last couple of, like all the drama, back in December, I realize very close, but at the end of the day, you've got to find one that sticks. And
yes,
that's just the fact of the matter. No matter, it's just where he is. And I guess that's kind of what I'm looking at. All right. Chicago Bears defensive lineman Justin Jones went off on Green Bay Packers fans yesterday. He called them excrement. Mm-hmm. He actually didn't use the word excrement. He used the word for what you do when you go number 2. This is a family show, so I'm not actually going to say the word. Called them obnoxious. He said half of them don't even know football. And he said he also wishes that Aaron Rodgers was still playing with the Packers so they could beat him this season. So rate this rant on a scale of 1 to 10, Vince.
Oh, it's a 12. I mean, look, one of the I don't want to say one of the problems. I don't know if that is effective, but this isn't the old school NFL where there were legit rivalries for the players. Free agency obviously has pretty much killed that. There's too much movement. I mean, guys go from the Bears to the Packers all the time. There's just, I mean, growing up, I would assume that the Eagles-Cowboys rivalry wasn't just the fans. I'm guessing it was probably the players as well, right? I mean, I'm going out on a limb, but I'm going to say that was a pretty heated rivalry on the field as much as it was off the field.
Right.
I think Bears-Packers used to be much more of a rivalry for the players back in the day. We don't see it anymore. And we don't see players trash-talking other teams anymore. Because you never know when that
team... He's trash-talking the fans, though. He's going after the Packers.
He's going after the whole organization, frankly. And that's
right.
Which I'm okay with, too. But you don't see that anymore because you never know when that team might be in play for you to go play with or whatever. So they just don't do it anymore. I'm all for it, man. I am all for it. I'm all for the pettiness. I'm all for the anger. I'm all for all of it. Call them all out. Fans, players, the front office, whatever, man. Call them all. Because he called out Aaron Rodgers. Awesome. Call them all out, baby. We need more of that in the NFL.
I mean, I completely agree. Rivalries are not nearly what they all, used to be, just like you said. And free agency is the main culprit. Like,
yes.
Back in the, 80s and prior to that, you had guys who stuck around with teams for the majority of their career because it was pre-free agency. That has all changed now. Like you look at a guy like Deion Sanders or Terrell Owens, who both played for the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. I guess Charles Haley actually did too. But, like Owens and Sanders were both a direct result of free agency. Haley was traded over there. Like, I remember, again, like going back to talking about that Cowboys Redskins, there was like a playoff game between those two. I think it was in the early 80s, and someone had sent a funeral wreath to the Dallas Cowboys before the game. I don't know if it was a Redskins fan or who it was, and the Cowboys won the game. And afterwards, Harvey Martin, the big defensive end, took the funeral wreath. He marched into the Washington Redskins locker room. He opened the door and he threw the funeral wreath inside the Redskins locker room.
That's awesome.
The game. It's beautiful. And I mean, if you want to get the fan base on your side, you do what Justin Jones did.
Yep.
And you call out your biggest rival, and you rally the fans around you. The Bears have obviously not been on Packers level in recent years. That should very well change this year. But you at least want guys like that who, are willing to stir it up, willing to mix it up, and have the belief. I love it.
I love that story. And to be honest with you, look, and Quinn is the one that brings this up. He says, don't forget, Rodgers told a Bears fan that he owns them.
Yeah, that's
true. He did. Look, yes, he said it, but was it untrue? No. And it hurt my heart. It hurt everything about me because I'm a Bears fan, but he's not wrong. Talk that trash, man. And this is the one and only time you're ever going to hear me say anything good about Aaron Rodgers. But I had no problem with him saying that because it was true. And he did it in Soldier Field. And I mean, hey, touche to you, buddy. I if you can back it up, man, I have no problem with the trash talk. I have no problem with it.
Salty threw a question in earlier. Does it seem to you that once he decided to leave Notre Dame, Phil Jurkovec transferred to Boston College, then Pittsburgh, in part to play Notre Dame every year?
I mean, it's possible. He has trouble keeping Notre Dame out of his mouth, obviously, and the most recent interview that he gave at Pitt is prime example of that.
Mentioned Notre Dame, I committed to Notre Dame, and blah, blah, blah.
Never once mentioned BC. So that was interesting. But Phil just needs to graduate and move on at this point, and he needs to not keep mentioning Notre Dame because it doesn't end well for him. I mean, he didn't play last year because he was injured, obviously, and everything. But like, dude, if I know that Phil is from Pittsburgh, John,
and that's what he was kind of saying in that Twitter clip, the interview. He was doing a walk and talk interview. It looked like they were on campus or something.
Yep.
He's like, "Oh, I don't know why you want to go anywhere. Just stay at Pittsburgh. They've got
And
everything."
he should have committed there in the
you
first
need."
place.
Yeah, if that's what you thought, then but obviously he grew up wanting to go to Notre Dame and all. It didn't work out, but
No,
it
it
still
didn't.
obviously lives rent free in his brain.
Yeah. No doubt. He brings it up all the time. He brought it up before the BC game last year. He brings it up in this interview. Just wait for the Notre Dame Pittsburgh week next year or this coming year. I'm sure he's going to bring it up again. Awesome. Go ahead. It's just going to be a royal beatdown again. And
cultural appropriation.
So stupid. Like, really? Really? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, is he going to go on social media before Pittsburgh comes to town? And
I hope he's learned his lesson, and he doesn't. But based on the interview he just gave, he's going to say something stupid. He's going to. He's going to say something stupid.
I don't think he can help himself at this point.
Yeah.
I just don't think he can.
Absolutely. Good for him.
Yeah. Salty also says Paul McCartney has discussed a new Beatles song in which John Lennon's voice will be the product of AI computing. Should an artist have the right to not be AI copied?
Well, now I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure McCartney owns the rights to the Beatles stuff.
Well, that's a good question because, there was a famous conversation many years ago between Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson, where McCartney told Michael Jackson, like, the money is in, owning the rights to the music. And so Michael Jackson went out and bought the Beatles library and, out from under Paul McCartney.
Wow.
And, so he owned the Beatles library. So I don't know, with Michael Jackson's death a few years back and, where exactly any of that lies right now.
Yeah, I don't know what the
legal able to buy it back or, any of that stuff.
Well, I know I saw a little bit of a story on this. Was it today? I don't know. Yesterday, maybe. I don't know. But Yoko Ono gave Paul McCartney a cassette of a song that John Lennon wrote and sang on after he died. She gave him the cassette, so it does belong to Paul McCartney, and that's what they're using. They're basically putting out a single, a John Lennon single, and I think the other Beatles are singing on it as well. I think that's what's happening, but it was his property. He owned it, and so it'll be interesting to see how that all works.
Yeah, it's going to be this whole AI, the chat. What is it? Chat GPT or whatever. It's like. We could be sitting here 5 years from now and you could be watching this show and it's, just computer generated.
It'd be great.
Dude,
that would free me up to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It'd be all
free up Vince's time.
Man,
that's right. So filmmaker Kevin Smith of Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob fame says there are some classic movies that need a current reboot. One of the ones that he mentioned specifically is The Bad News Bears. Smith said he envisions Kelly Leak and Amanda Wurlitzer, who are grown-ups and are now coaching against each other in Little League. My first question is, would you watch that?
No. Well, I can't say no because I probably would. It would be like, do I want to watch this train wreck? This potential train wreck. First of all, they never should have remade the movie in the first place. But you're talking about a reboot, as in you're following the characters.
This is basically like what they did with the Karate Kid.
Right.
It's not just like you're doing a remake of it.
Right.
They did a whole. First, it was on YouTube, and then YouTube TV, and then it went over to Netflix. It became a modernized, a follow-up, 40 years later.
And I loved it. It was great.
That would be what this is. It would be like Jackie Earl Haley and Tatum O'Neal, who played the two characters. Now they would be grown up, and they would be I think it's a perfect Netflix series, personally, just like what Karate Kid did. I think if they did it right, I think it could be pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, they'd have to. It's such a narrow needle to thread, though. You know what I mean? Like, they threaded the needle with Cobra Kai. Like, they threaded that needle perfectly. It was great. My son even has a Cobra Kai T-shirt that he wears all the time. Like, they threaded that needle perfectly. you would have to do it right, because there's other ones that they've done or that they've rebooted that have just not been good.
Right, like they've tried, they tried to bring back 90210. Did they try
Bad.
like a more modern Melrose Place or
I don't
something like that?
think so. I think
But like,
90210 was it,
look at Top Gun Maverick. It's the same kind of deal, same characters.
which was really good.
30 years later.
Which
Yeah.
was really good. I mean, I would
think
watch it.
I would be at the very least
Yeah.
intrigued by it and
Yeah.
see where it goes. But like Jackie Earle Haley, he's one of these actors that's kind of kicked around every once in a while. He's made like these little comebacks. Tatum O'Neal, you obviously haven't unfortunately seen as much of. She did. Did you ever watch Rescue Me, the firefighters show with Dennis Leary a few years back? Kind of a dramedy.
I remember that show now, but no, I never watched it.
Yeah, she was in that for a little bit, but like both of them, I think that it would be like a really good comeback opportunity for both of them. And if you get the right writers, I think it could be really funny, because it's like, again, it's like week after week, here's Kelly Leak and Amanda Wurlitzer, button heads on the Little League diamond, fighting over practice time, and
could be good.
all different kind of little League misadventures and stuff like that. So, okay, you're not as hot on the Bad News Bears reboot then, but like, are there any that you could think of that maybe you would like to see?
See, I tried to come up with like all the shows or movies that I really enjoyed growing up, and I feel like they've tried to redo almost all of them. There's just a lot of lack of imagination out there right now, I feel like. Now here's one, and there might be controversial, I don't know, but I was a big fan of the Wonder Years growing up. I really loved that show.
I was thinking the same thing.
Really? Okay.
Wonder Years.
So they tried this weird reboot with an African-American family, and they call it the Wonder Years.
And again, you're not remaking it. You want to get the same people who played those, like with Cobra Kai and Karate Kid.
I want to see Winnie and the whole crew. I want to see them as adults. And like, I want to see,
are Kevin and Winnie married, or like maybe they're divorced now, like they got married and they're, something like that.
Right. Yeah. And so like what they did with the Wonder Years, they came out with a new Wonder Years, but it's not the same characters. It's a different thing. I want to see the characters grown up. That's exactly. That's the one that came to mind for me. And I was thinking, as I was trying to come up with like the different show, like my mom always used to watch Magnum PI. That's been redone. Like they've redone a lot of the stuff.
I think haven't they canceled that already, or like
I don't even know.
I don't think it did very well.
It never really resonated with me. Like MacGyver. Like I love MacGyver when I was a kid. They redid that one. I don't know.
Yeah, we were both on the same with the Wonder Years.
That's hilarious. Like, I didn't know you were a fan.
Like watch that. That was kind of when I was in college. I was watching the Wonder Years.
Okay.
So, Sandlot. Like, I thought about Sandlot. Because you remember like at the very end when he's the Dodgers play-by-play announcer and Benny the Jet, played for the Dodgers.
Like an aging Dodgers player.
Yeah, like maybe you visit that era, like where the guy is doing the play-by-play and Benny is playing, and something happens there.
I could see that.
I thought about like Ferris Bueller, where like Ferris has grown up and now he's the principal and he's like, dealing with the punk kids and stuff like that.
He was the dean of students who he was dealing with that whole time. He was the dean of students. And I didn't realize that until I watched it recently after I got my dean of students job. And I was like, I was riveted to the movie in a whole new way, watching that and knowing that he was the dean of students. I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, that could be a fun one for sure.
Michael said, anyone heard any rumors about Happy Days? That would be interesting. Like
I never got into Happy Days. That was a little before
that was way before your time, Meg. But they could all basically be grandparents now,
easily.
So
easily.
Quinn wants to know what your go-to seed flavor was when you were coaching baseball. He says he's a big buffalo wing guy.
I wasn't a big seed guy. I would do more seeds at practice than I would at games. I know some people are religious about their seeds during games, but I was way too focused on what I was doing. And if you're playing on turf, they don't allow seeds anyway. So that's a new thing. But anyway, I was an original and a ranch. Those are usually the ones that I liked the most. I'm not a barbecue guy.
I like the barbecue and the wings myself, like the
Okay.
hot. But the problem is, like, just with like you end up like with the canker sores and stuff like that. Your cheeks are all puckered up. So I
Right.
typically would go more bubblegum, than seeds when I could. So.
See, Big League Chew. Can't go wrong with Big League Chew. That's my favorite.
Yep.
That's my favorite. Quinn wants stories of kids sent to my office. Someday I'll write a book. Someday I'll write a book.
I also thought about, have you seen Say Anything? John Cusack? Say
No.
Anything?
Is that the
Yes,
the one
where he's holding the boombox.
I know that scene, but I have no idea why.
There's a scene about kickboxing, sport of the future, all that kind of stuff. I thought about like Lloyd Dobler is now, Lloyd Dobler, and he's running the MMA, or something like that. Like he had a successful, because kickboxing was the sport of the future. He became a successful, MMA guy, and now he's running the MMA, or he's doing like an MMA podcast or something like that. Since like working podcasts into storylines is kind of a big,
that is a thing,
a recent trend now in TV and movies and stuff like that.
I'm trying to think, because like, as a big Saved by the Bell fan, they've rebooted that. They've done a lot of the ones that I used to watch, to be honest with you.
I like I was thinking about Breakfast Club. I couldn't think of like how I would do it. Baldwin says Judd Nelson is being abused by his kids. Fix me a turkey pot pie, Dad.
that would be weird, like, because you'd have to somehow get all of those kids involved as adults.
Mm-hmm.
So to like all their kids go to the same high school, and then they have the issue. Like Breakfast Club was such it was one day. It was one day that all these kids came together. Are we sure that they all hung out afterwards? Are we sure that was you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I have a different quandary that I want to throw to you.
Okay.
So I was listening the Ryan Russillo podcast. At the end of his podcast, he does life advice, and he takes emails from listeners and he does life advice for them. So the one I was just listening to, some relatively young guy moves to Los Angeles, I think it was, or Southern California anyway, with his girlfriend and her mother. Okay. And they all move into this house together. Guy, girlfriend, her mother. Within a month, girl meets a guy online, breaks up with guy, moves out, says that, she's going to, check in with the new guy, but current boyfriend who's writing this letter still living in the rented house with the girl's mom.
What?
It gets better. Now, ex-girlfriend asks the guy if she will drive him or drive her to the new, to the guy she met online who lives like 8 hours away to save her money. And the guy is asking if he should do it.
What? How is that even a possibility? How is that even something that you would consider? No.
Not even
How about you ask your mom? She's in the next room over.
That's right.
There's no way.
It seems like a total, like this mom and girl are totally playing this guy or something.
Poor guy.
I know.
Poor guy.
I know. And I didn't, apparently he sent a picture, he's like, she's out of my league, basically he was lucky to have her, all this. It just sounds like dude with no self-esteem needs to, just like kick her to the curb, go run as far as he can. And,
and kick mom to the curb too. Like you need to get her out. I realize they're in California, they probably can't afford it.
And they were renting a house. Yeah. And that's why, like the lease, and that's the other thing is like, he was, considering, does he stay in the house with the mom until like next March or something like that? Because they literally just got the lease. It's like, I think you got to eat that deposit and go back to wherever you came from.
I mean,
and,
the legal ramifications would be I would be researching the financial legal ramifications of being in that house or not being in that house, right? If I had to stay in the same house as the mom, like, first of all, what is that dynamic like? Because there are plenty of relationships out there where you get along better with your mother-in-law than you do with the person you're in a relationship with.
True.
And but so I wonder what that relationship is like. But if I was that guy, I'd be bringing home a different girl like every week, like just rubbing it in. I don't know. I
know.
I would make it miserable for that mom to live there.
In no world do you drive the girlfriend 8 hours to go meet up with her new online boyfriend, though.
No chance.
Yeah.
No chance. And if he's got any friends whatsoever, they got to be telling him that.
Yeah. I think what Russillo said is like, he's obviously considering it because he thinks he's got some chance of actually getting back with her. But the only way you're actually getting back with that girl is if you give her the boot and you just tell her in no uncertain terms later. And hope, maybe sometime down the road she comes to her senses and comes crawling back. But she ain't coming back if you're cowing to her like that.
So, not a chance. Not a chance.
Picks would help me answer, Terry. It's a very good point. Just, like what leagues are we talking about?
Right. I would like to see the pictures as well, frankly. But I want to see the picture of the mom. Does that make me old?
If you're stuck living with the mom, if the girl is cute, there's at least a 50-50 chance the mom might be. So
just saying. Just saying.
I don't know.
Be worth a thought.
If you're putting yourself in that situation. So all right. Let's end on that tonight. Right. Great questions tonight. Fun show tonight. Tomorrow's show, Kevin Corrigan, national championship lacrosse coach. He'll join me to start the show. And then Jesse will be in for rapid fire as well. And I think we've got a 3-man rapid fire on Friday, once again, for the second week in a row.
I'll be tuning in from Cincinnati. So hopefully the hotel internet is pluses.
I hope so too. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We will talk to you then. Hit the like button on your way out. And of course, subscribe, rate, and review. Talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.